Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 119, we have joining us Rachael Nealer, an energy and transportation leader and former executive director of the United States Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, where she talks about why it is important to break down silos, new models for momentum, and the importance of making research actionable. She also talks about what she thinks can be applied from passenger cars to trucks, and why money is not the only thing needed to transition to a new technology. She also shares what she sees as some of the less common benefits and challenges of electric vehicles and gives some advice on approaching the future. Hello, and welcome to this episode of my podcast series. I'm really excited today. We have Rachael Nealer, former executive director of the U.S. Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. And we'll get into that, I'm sure. But thanks for joining me today, Rachael. I'm really excited for this chat.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm really excited to be here too.
You're not in the smallest of clubs, having left the government in the last 6 or 8 months. And so I look forward to chatting to you about that. But the title of this podcast is Mike Roth and Friends, Rachael. So we are friends, and you have to be a friend to be on this. But do you remember when we first met?
I am sure it was at a conference many, many years ago, and you have now entered into my category of I've known them forever, friend and colleague. So I do remember getting this hat, though. It was at an EPRI conference in Savannah, Georgia, just a couple of years ago. So thanks again for the hat. And when paired with our Ford Lightning, we are the coolest kids on the block for sure.
I believe that these battery electric vehicles, cars, trucks, are simpler by nature and simpler to build. And I think we do need to reassess how we're building them, whether you're a battery electric only OEM or if you're trying to also build, maybe diesel or natural gas trucks down the same assembly line.
Now is the time to get creative. Not only of how we build things, but also how we work together, because we've built a lot of silos and we've created some problems in those silos that aren't going to be solved unless we break those silos down. So I think now is the time to really get creative. I think we're still going to be driven by, especially companies, by the bottom line. And so if there are ways that we can break out of the mold that we've used for years, especially with a new technology like electrification, I'm all for it.
There is a big opportunity here to take advantage of something that's much different. And when something new that's coming is different, it opens up opportunities that we can miss if we just sort of keep our heads down and put that different thing in the old school or the current stable environment. And I think we've got some real opportunities. A podcast guest recently challenged us on that as well. But let's talk about Rachael for a minute. What makes you tick, both professionally and personally, and just go back over your career or as far back in your life as you want to, Rachael, to help us understand why you do what you do and what drives you.
Absolutely. So it's actually a great segue, because one of the things that I have been thinking about a lot recently has been new models for momentum. How do we get creative about how we work together because of our siloed problems and needing to bridge across those silos? But I also think there's a lot of power in community. We have a lot of stakeholders involved in the transportation electrification space, and even more at the decarbonization level. So when you talk about manufacturing across different types of vehicles and fuels, that's even more stakeholders. So how do we continue to align them for win-win outcomes? My career grew out of the research community. So I have a PhD in civil and environmental engineering and engineering and public policy. But I really added that public policy piece because I wanted to make sure that the research I was doing was actionable, was applied. And so I think we have an opportunity to create these iterative, collaborative, and purpose-built teams and partnerships that can support data-driven decision-making. And so those are the 3 things that really keep me up at night, that make me tick, that keep me excited about the space, especially through some of the uncertainties that we're going through, with federal funding being uncertain, federal priorities being uncertain. Ultimately, though, personally, the things that drive me are my daughters. I have a 12-year-old stepdaughter and a 2-year-old daughter. And the idea that they would be able to drive up to an EV charger that I help to install when they are driving is just a great capstone to my work. And especially with my 2-year-old daughter, I really want her to not know what a gas station is other than picking up goodies, snacks.
Cars versus trucks. So I know you've done a lot of work in the passenger car space. When as being part of the joint office, and that joint office for everybody is with the Department of Energy and Department of Transportation, and was put in place to help get things done faster. I mean, even I questioned, why do we need one more government thing? Uh, but putting those some experts from both of those organizations, you being one of them, together, maybe talk about the joint office, and then what did you kind of see and learn there as to what can be applied from passenger cars to trucks and buses or not? I mean, I get it's on my mind a lot as to what we can learn from the car side and what we really can't, because trucks are a different type of vehicle.
Absolutely. So maybe starting with the basics, the joint office, like you said, was across the Department of Transportation, Department of Energy. It started in 2021 with the passing of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And really, our goal was to support many of the investments in that same bill, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, the Charging Fueling Infrastructure Program, as well as transit bus and school bus programs that were administered by EPA and the Federal Transit Administration. NEVI and CFI, the two EV charging programs that I talked about, are administered by the Federal Highway Administration. So while we didn't administer the programs, our office was really a recognition that only investing money isn't enough for new technology transition. And we provided that strategic support to both the federal and state government, as well as the private sector, with a mission of a future where everyone can ride and drive electric. So we were kind of one-stop shop for all electrification needs. And so we did kind of cross the borders between light duty and medium and heavy duty. When I left the joint office just a couple months ago, we were only starting to get into the newly awarded CFI grants. And so that was actually where we were excited about many of the medium and heavy duty investments, but it was something that hadn't really started yet. For both light duty and medium and heavy duty, though, we were providing technical assistance for anyone that was interested in learning more about it. So we have a website that's still active with a lot of resources on it, driveelectric.gov, that does talk a lot about the light duty, how to make that transition. And then we have rideelectric.gov, which focuses on the bus sector. But like I said, we were really only starting on medium and heavy duty when I left and when the administration transitioned over. But there's still a lot of good work from the joint office that's happening through the Vehicle Technologies Office.
One of the things I'd like to bring up, just to help the audience and inform them, because you and I know a fair amount of these, is I've served on two National Academy of Science committees on improving the efficiency of medium and heavy trucks, and then I was also named to be part of the, what do we call it, Rachel? The electric vehicle. It was an electric vehicle committee of 18 or 20 people across both passenger car and medium and heavy duty. And National Academy of Science came out of Abraham Lincoln questioning, the government being all knowing about how they do things, not from the regulation standpoint, maybe as much as on just actions the federal government does to move different things along, whether it's medicine or transportation or other things. And so, experts are brought in, not paid for their time, but paid for their travel by the federal government. And I have always seen that as a great place to both, after different actions and rules and laws are in place to help guide the government through between sort of industry, the public, and the government on an ongoing basis. So I guess I'm putting a pitch in there for that continuing between, helping things work well, whether they're policy or other things. Did I kind of describe those things correctly from your chair, Rachel, or how would you expand what I said? And what's the importance of those sort of efforts?
Yeah, and I think that we were laying the groundwork on medium and heavy duty in the last couple years. So we had the EV working group, which Dean Bushy, he was our medium and heavy duty representative in that group, and they did come up with some initial priorities and recommendations about the medium and heavy duty sector. So you can find those on driveelectric.gov. We also, in the Joint Office, published in collaboration with the Vehicle Technologies Office, the Zero Emission Freight Strategy. So that was a national assessment of a phased approach to how we electrify and use hydrogen for the transportation sector. So kind of looking at initially where there might be some market pull and then expanding out to a national network through multiple phases. So I think there's a lot of groundwork. I do think that medium and heavy duty is a couple years behind light duty in terms of market uptake. But I think this is a really unique place and time for us to do some planning of how we actually roll out medium and heavy duty electrification. Right, we know the trucks are available for most use cases, like you said, and very well, the driver's side, the experience is there. People feel really good about driving electric when they're exposed to it. And you see that on the light duty sector side too.
There's been various different times in my career where executives, people in middle management have come from trucking in Europe or Asia to the US, or also we've seen a lot of passenger car people come into trucks. And so I tell you, so many times over my career, I've preached to them, trucks aren't cars. US trucks with our long distances and other dynamics are different than European trucks and Asian trucks and South American trucks. But let me tell you a little experience I've had with electric vehicles. Passenger cars go back 20 years. We were all like, well, we got to have charging at the malls and we got to have charging at work and we got to have charging here and there and everywhere. All this public asks us charging. And really, we went through 10 or 15 years where home charging was enough. Now, you could say that, that limits the market to people who own houses and garages, but, you know, charging at home of passenger cars is still the primary place we charge these vehicles. So ironically, I think the exact thing is happening with trucks. If those trucks return to base every night, think about your postal service, where those little, vehicles come back and sit there all night long. We can put a slow charger on the fence and have that truck or van ready for the next day. Or, Amazon, UPS, FedEx, those sort of trucks, or any really city truck or tractor that isn't utilized in a second shift can come back to base. And then we're even seeing that on the heavy duty city tractors or short haul. So I do think there's some things that we can keep learning. Maybe I'm preaching to myself, Rachel, while I talk to you. Is that there are some things that the light duty consumer passenger car space can help us here, particularly when electrification.
Yeah, I think so. I also think that one of the benefits of the medium and heavy duty sector is the fact that you're already experienced in fleet management, right? This is just another factor to consider. And so, how you manage that fleet, how you are able to charge up at the right times, it's something that I think you have the right mental models to do that already. Whereas light duty is a little bit more of, you know, changing your perspective a little bit about how you charge. Like if you do charge at home, it's great that you don't have to go to the gas station, right? I just did a 1,900-mile trip to Canada, and it was a great experience. It was a quiet and comfortable ride in our Ford Lightning. We always have the ability to refuel at home, but this trip was using public chargers that were pretty readily available. I think there's still a little bit more to learn on the charging experience. We have room to grow in that reliability. Um, just, amenities at the charging stations are still very variable. We have low to no emissions depending on where you plug in. It's fun to drive with instant torque and you have lower maintenance. And I see many of those things translating over to medium and heavy duty as well. And then you get to play in this space with more rational actors than, say, the light duty market.
Yeah, I think these are tools that these businesses buy to help their businesses make money, quite frankly. So that is much different than how we tend to buy passenger cars. We do that a little bit, but this is the trucking is very assured of that. I say quite often the trucking industry was built for this moment. And what I mean by that is we now have data collection on all these trucks. We're streaming, tons of data back to the home offices to help make decisions on routing and other things. So as these electric vehicles have, and trucks in particular, have all these benefits, they've got challenges of range and they got to find chargers and then how we smart or manage the charging to keep the cost down and so forth. But we were built for this. Now, with the technologies around data and management systems and choices around routing and all kinds of things, these, let's call it more limited vehicles. Now they have other benefits. Don't get me wrong. But we can do this. Now it will take finding the right use cases now and in the soon and then later avoiding some of those until we've got, the capability. But we can do this. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. Ultimately, these are better technologies, and I think that's where we agree, Mike. Um, but there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs with all technologies. I think it's really important that we work as an industry together on a roadmap that is adaptive to the market and investments, kind of like the zero emission freight strategy. And now we have this really interesting aspect of utility requests, right? Medium and heavy depots might be larger and require larger electricity loads. But we also have this new sector of AI data and electricity needs. And so, how are we adapting over time? We can't publish the zero emission freight strategy and expect that to keep us through the next decade. The intention was to continue to revise that with market inputs and investment inputs. And so I think we still need to focus on that. We still need to bring it to people.
Yeah, very good point. And there's obvious benefits and challenges of these trucks. There's like sort of interesting ones, but difficult to monetize. And then there's some others they're just better and they're hard to quantify them. So maybe you're the first double PhD that I consider to have one hell of a lot of common sense. Can you think of one or two benefits of electric? Let's just stick with trucks and one or two challenges that don't come up in most conversations or are yet to be really figured out. So something that's hard to do that we're still just figuring out, maybe not commonly known, and something that is a benefit that we ought to be talking more about.
Yeah, I think that we're still going to be driven by the bottom line, and probably even more so now that we have some uncertainty and some ending of federal incentives. So I think we really do need to focus in on that. What we know is that total cost of ownership oftentimes is positive for electrification, but not all fleets can take advantage of that in the time frames, and some of them can't pay that upfront difference in cost. So I do think now is the time to really focus in on, how we might be able to think creatively about how to make that all pencil out. I do think that charging in particular is something that we're going to have to work together and strategize on in the next number of years. What I think is really excited about this compared to years ago is that we're talking more about details of charging and expanding out into medium and heavy duty more so than is it going to be there. And we're talking about technology advancements like plug and charge, not just, am I going to have enough? So I think that we still have some of those incentives in EV charging that will be available across states. About 1.5 billion is currently available through the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And now the new guidance, I don't know if you saw the new guidance for the NEVI program also just came out and is more flexible, which may allow more discretionary funding by the states faster, which actually could mean really great investments by state and federal government in medium and heavy duty. It doesn't necessarily have to be along the charging corridors and with specifically for light duty vehicles.
The pioneers out there, I encourage them to keep working on it, whether you're a supplier or a manufacturer or a fleet or anyone, because as Rachel and I've been talking about, there's a ton of benefits here. Considering we've got an audience listening to this casual little chat we're having over morning coffee, what's your advice to people who may get frustrated? I'm sure you've had some frustrations given what you've gone through, but believe in this future. How do we get through this, and how are we going to come out of it, successful?
Yeah, I think we have to have a long-term view of this. So bottom line, I think for electrification is that we're probably in the next couple of years going to move a little slower than we expected, but maybe that gives us more room to make better decisions and listen to the data as we go along. Exactly what you were talking about earlier with many of these vehicles being streams of data at this point. But what I think we really need is continued iterative, collaborative, and purpose built teams and partnerships that really make research actionable. I think we need to harness the power of our community and continue to align stakeholders for these win win outcomes. And I think we need to be creative and open about how we work together to bridge silos with new models for momentum. Next couple of years, Mike, I'm not going to lie, I think they're going to be hard. But what I'm hearing from most stakeholders is that the long term goalposts haven't moved. And I think collectively we're ready for it.
When I answer the question, why have I stayed in trucking for now 40 years as of a couple months ago, I answer it with exactly what you said we need more of. And that's data, collaboration, teamwork, find the experts that and the right people to put on these teams, not too many, but not too few, and just go get it done. I mean, we've done that with near zero pollutant emissions over the last 20, 30 years. We've done it with deregulation in trucking before my career. I mean, there's plenty of moments we can look back on where we did exactly what you said we need to do more of in the future to get through times like these. So thanks so much for being on. I always appreciate talking to you. You're eloquent and logical and always helpful. I'm going to do some of the things you suggested myself.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I can't wait to see where we are in the next couple of years and next conference we're at. Maybe we'll be able to reflect on the progress we've made.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.